Hey everyone, this is gonna be a serious video in a lot of ways, and I feel uncomfortable just throwing us into the throes of things without a warning, so here's a content warning about the fact this film deals very heavily with the topic of sexual assault, rape, and general sexism, okay? Alright, let's start the video then. Women Talking is a film that the minute it hit the festival circuit with its runs at Telluride, TIFF, and the New York Film Festival, I was hearing big things about it, many listing it as the must-see movie of the year. And mainly when it comes to that fall season, phrases like that do get thrown around, but I had many a friend of mine buzzing at me about just how special this film was. So going into the film festival I saw this at, I purposely went in knowing very little outside the fact that it dealt in a way with the topic of sexual assault, and the fact that it was being directed by Sarah Polley, who was mostly famous to me for having directed the excellent documentary Stories We Tell. Otherwise, I knew nothing. I just wanted the film to speak for itself. And God did it speak. One thing that is important to note off the bat is that this film is very dialogue heavy. It is mostly, as the title suggests, women talking. That is it. But despite how that sounds, it is far from boring. I get that many maybe saw the trailers for this film and maybe felt like the film was going to be so dialogue heavy that it wasn't going to be very interesting. But it all works well here. I mean, after all, the plot hinges on these discussions. The plot entails a massive rapes of women in a religious colony, women waking up bruised and violated, some even impregnated. We do not see the actions, only the aftermaths, and it is enough to show the power of the trauma. We see the scars. When the women discover the attackers and one attempts to strike back, the men leave the village to help the injured perpetrators, and the women are left with three options: stay and forgive the men, stay and fight, or leave the colony. It's a hefty question, and the debate and the preparation for their eventual decision result in them asking a lot about how the world works, how the colony is run, how God behaves, and how to create a more free and open society. And as such, the conversations are utterly fascinating. After all, as the film is trying to point out, we are still having these conversations today. We may not be Mennonites, but our society is still run and designed by patriarchy. A patriarchy that harms us all, and we must know how to proceed. And the film does so with its characters, all of which have their own convictions and consistent belief systems that have to be challenged. Each debate has weight and depth that makes sense, and enough character. And it's never quite so simple. And cinematically, it manages to do a lot with its format. In a way, it reminds me of Sidney Lumet's classic film 12 Angry Men. You're stuck in this densely packed small room. There's a room full of characters that are all deeply different and complex, and there isn't much more to the film than discussing, and yet Polley, just like Lumet before her, uses the same framework of harnessing the power of blocking, editing, and camera movements to make such a small space with just dialogue feel so huge and important. Not to mention, the performances here are splendid. Let me put it this way, when a film features Frances McDormand for barely 10 minutes of screen time, and that doesn't feel like a waste because the rest of the ensemble is so quality that you don't feel like you miss having a 3-time Oscar winner around, you know the film is full of talent. Rooney Mara, Claire Foy, Jessie Buckley, Judith Ivey, Sheila McCarthy, Michelle McLeod, and Paddington himself, Ben Whishaw, all bring their A-game to this fantastic piece. It kind of feels bad to not just be listing off the entire ensemble here, because there isn't a single performance below great in this film. If you want the best ensemble performance for the year, this is it. And again, this is such an important film too. This is a film that manages to discuss the issues of rape and patriarchy in a perfectly done way. The conversations include messages about how men, even the men who perpetuate and are raised up by these systems, are still often forced into them by lessons taught. The fact this is built to empower only those who are already in power. That women deserve a say in their societal place. That teenage boys can be dangerous but can be taught better. There is even a trans man character played by a trans-masked non-binary person who the village doesn't respect and has such taken a vow of silence to anyone but the kids. that highlights that trans people are a discussion of these feminist issues, which admittedly was a reassuring element to me, at least, considering all of the things going on with the rise of gender-critical transphobia. And how did these pictures of J.K. Rowling and Graham Linehan get in here? Oh no! There really is so much value here. There is one big thing you've probably been noticing throughout this review, though, and that is probably the biggest knock most have against this film. The color grading is not great. It's not truly awful, some shots are quite stunning still, but the exposure and lighting is definitely low to a point that it kinda feels like you're watching on low brightness even when you're in a theater, and the film seemingly does little to even out the blue tints that it ends up feeling dark and dank. It is by far the weakest element of the film, and I do not blame many for finding it quite abrasive. Again though, the core beyond that color grading is a great film. Hell, in a lot of ways, by the end you've forgotten all about the colors of the film as you're so entrenched in the great acting, directing, dialogue, and even a great soundtrack by Hildur Guðnadóttir, whose work here is as incredible as her name is hard to spell and pronounce. I'm so sorry, I did my best. Hell, as the foremost expert on the monkeys in the YouTube video essay space, I can also say this film even has the best monkeys needle drop I've ever heard. Really, even if you bristle at the color grading and even have trouble watching movies that are primarily conversations, I do highly encourage you at least check it out. Really is one of the most affecting films I've seen all year, and among its best. A film that deserves its place to speak. Sarah Polley's Women Talking gets a 9 out of 10.